Welcome to When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, where I look at some films key to the development of us members of Generation X. 1986's Little Shop of Horrors was directed by Frank Oz, the famed Muppet puppeteer who also directed such films as The Muppets Take Manhattan and The Dark Crystal. He's also, of course, the voice of Yoda. Little Shop of Horrors was based on an off-Broadway musical, which featured lyrics by Howard Ashman and music by Alan Menken. Ashman and Menken would famously collaborate on The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin before Ashman's death in 1991. That off-Broadway musical was based on the 1960 B-movie The Little Shop of Horrors, which was written by Charles B. Griffith and directed by low-budget impresario Roger Corman. After an opening narration about how the events depicted in the film posed a deadly threat to our existence, we open in New York City at some point in the early 1960s. We meet a trio of beautiful young women who are known collectively as the Greek Chorus. A Greek chorus is a theatrical device originating in ancient Greece, wherein a group of peripheral characters will comment directly on the story as it unfolds. The three young women, who are named Crystal, Ronette, and Chiffon, in an homage to the famous 1960s girl groups, the Crystals, the Ronettes, and the Chiffons, perform many of the film's songs, singing directly to viewers to provide us with information about the story. Essentially, they are singing narrators who wear fabulous matching outfits and look like $1 million. Ronette is played by Michelle Weeks, while Chiffon is played by Tisha Campbell, and Crystal is played by Tashina Arnold. Arnold and Campbell would also co-star together on the Fox series Martin in the 1990s. The Greek chorus performs the musical's title track, singing and dancing their way down a rainy New York street to Mushnick's Flower Shop, where we meet a hapless young man named Seymour Krelborn. Seymour is played by Rick Moranis, whom we've already seen in Ghostbusters and Streets of Fire. Mushnick's Flower Shop is run by Mr. Mushnick, played by Vincent Gardenia, two-time Oscar nominee for Bang the Drum Slowly and Moonstruck. Seymour has a secret crush on his co-worker, a sweetly ditzy young woman named Audrey, who arrives at work with a black eye she received from her no-good boyfriend. Hoping for some star power, the film's producers had originally offered the role of Audrey to Cyndi Lauper. Lauper turned it down, and it went to future Pushing Daisies star Ellen Greene, who had originated the role on stage, and who is really wonderful in the part. I flat out adore Cyndi Lauper, and she would have been great, but it's hard to imagine her improving upon Ellen Greene's performance. The flower shop is located in a bad section of Lower Manhattan. All the down-on-their-luck residents of the area assemble to sing a tribute to their neighborhood, Skid Row. The songs in Little Shop of Horrors are very good and very clever, without exception, but Skid Row is a showstopper. It piles on layers of awesomeness until it reaches the point where it's grimly hilarious and deeply heartfelt all at once. Seymour recently found a strange and interesting little plant, which looks a bit like a Venus flytrap. Due to his crush on Audrey, he has named the plant Audrey II. As soon as he puts Audrey II in the shop window, a customer enters to ask about it. The customer is played by Christopher Guest, whom we have seen in This Is Spinal Tap and The Princess Bride. Accompanied by Ronette, Crystal, and Chiffon, Seymour sings a doo-wop-style song called Da Doo, which explains how he was visiting a plant vendor in Chinatown. Everything suddenly went dark due to a total eclipse of the sun, and Audrey II appeared in a magical burst of green light. The unnamed customer listens to Seymour's story, then spontaneously buys $100 worth of roses. Soon more and more customers arrive, lured inside by their curiosity about that plant in the window. By the end of the day, though, Audrey II is wilting. Seymour sings Grow For Me about his failing attempts to nurse the plant back to health. When Seymour accidentally pricks his finger on a rose, he realizes what Audrey II really wants is human blood. He gives Audrey II a few drops of his blood, and Audrey II immediately starts growing. Seymour brings Audrey II onto Wink Wilkerson's Weird World, a radio show dedicated to interviews of local eccentrics. Wink, who is chock full of wacky gimmicks, is played by the late comedian John Candy. Seymour tells Wink about Audrey II, and the flower shop becomes even more popular. Ronette, Crystal, and Chiffon try to persuade Audrey to dump her no-good boyfriend and date a nice boy like Seymour. Audrey sings Somewhere That's Green about her secret yearning to lead a blissful suburban life with Seymour. As the plant store becomes a huge success, Audrey II continues to grow, and Seymour grows increasingly weak and sick due to loss of blood. The Greek chorus narrates these events through a lively calypso-themed number, ironically titled Some Fun Now. We finally meet Audrey's terrible boyfriend, Oren Scrivello. Oren rides around on a motorcycle dressed in black leather, singing about how he was a bad little kid. His mother convinced him to go into a profession that would allow him to be as sadistic as his cold black heart desired, which means he became a dentist. Oren Scrivello is played by Steve Martin, hugely famous at the time, both for his stand-up comedy and for his acting career, starring in films like The Man with Two Brains, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, and The Jerk. This is a small but extremely funny role with plenty of perfectly timed physical comedy, and Martin is brilliant in it. Oren arrives at the flower shop to pick up Audrey for a date. Unappalled Seymour witnesses firsthand how Oren mistreats Audrey. Inside the shop, Audrey II begins to wilt again, and Seymour has no more blood to spare. Audrey II has evolved to the stage where it can now speak, and it begs Seymour to feed it. Audrey II is voiced by Levi Stubbs, lead singer of Motown's The Four Tops. Audrey II sings the song Feed Me Seymour, urging Seymour to start killing people and insisting it can bring him enough fame and fortune to lead the life of his dreams. Seymour is horrified at the idea of killing anyone, but at just that moment, Oren and Audrey return from their date. Again, Seymour witnesses Oren being horrible to Audrey, and Seymour decides Oren is destined to become plant food. Oren sadistically mistreats a couple of dental patients, including a hapless young girl played by puppeteer Heather Henson, daughter of Jim Henson, and a man named Arthur Denton, who is played by Rick Moranis' Ghostbusters co-star Bill Murray. Fun fact, in Roger Corman's original 1960 film, Bill Murray's role was played by a pre-famed Jack Nicholson. Fun fact number 2, which should be taken with a grain of salt. According to various sources, the horrific dental tools used in this scene are the exact same props used to perform plastic surgery on Jack Nicholson's Joker in Tim Burton's Batman. I'm not convinced this bit of trivia passes my sniff test, but Batman and Little Shop of Horrors were both filmed at Pinewood Studios in England and were both produced by Warner Brothers, and both films share a certain number of crew members in common, particularly in the art department, so it is possible. I've also seen it reported online that the exact same props were used as the gynecological instruments in David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers, but Dead Ringers was filmed in Ontario and has no crew members in common with Little Shop of Horrors, and therefore I'm not going to believe that one. Arthur turns out to be a hardcore masochist, and he thoroughly enjoys all the torment Oren puts him through, which ruins Oren's fun. After Arthur leaves, Oren's next patient is Seymour. Seymour pulls a gun on Oren, but before he can kill him, Oren accidentally overdoses on nitrous oxide. Seymour chops Oren's corpse to bits and feeds him to Audrey II. Unfortunately for Seymour, Mushnick secretly witnesses his actions. In the morning, Audrey tells Seymour the police believe Oren has been the victim of foul play. She's upset, so Seymour comforts her and proclaims his love for her. They sing the duet Suddenly Seymour, and they kiss at last. Mushnick tries to blackmail Seymour over Oren's murder, and Audrey II urges Seymour to kill Mushnick. As Audrey II in the Greek chorus sings Supper Time, a desperate Seymour feeds Mushnick to Audrey II. While the Greek chorus sings The Meek Shall Inherit, Audrey II grows even bigger, and Seymour becomes a media darling. Unwilling to murder anyone else, Seymour asks Audrey to run away with him, and she agrees. While Seymour is out of the shop, though, Audrey II tries to eat Audrey. Seymour arrives just in time to pull Audrey out of Audrey II's jaws. Seymour is approached by a businessman from World Botanical Enterprises named Patrick Martin, played by comedian Jim Belushi, who wants to sell clippings of Audrey II to every household in America. Horrified at the prospect of Audrey II taking over the world, Seymour realizes the plant must be destroyed. Seymour goes up against Audrey II, and Audrey II fights back, singing Mean Green Mother from Outer Space. This is the only song in the film that didn't exist in the original musical. As you probably know, films that are adapted from pre-existing musicals almost always add one extra song to make it eligible to win the Oscar for Best Original Song. You Must Love Me was added to the film version of Evita. Beautiful Ghosts was added to Cats. Suddenly was added to Les Miserables. And Mean Green Mother from Outer Space was added to Little Shop of Horrors. I have strong opinions on the subject of adding unnecessary songs to a musical just to win an award, because in most cases, the added material is not up to the quality of the pre-existing songs. Mean Green Mother from Outer Space is a perfectly decent song, but it's the weakest link on the film's very strong soundtrack. That only makes sense, because stage musicals are typically workshopped for months and months in advance of production, and the song that gets stuck in there at the last minute without the benefit of that very extensive process is almost always going to suffer by comparison. Mean Green Mother from Outer Space did indeed snag a Best Original Song nomination, though it lost to Berlin's Take My Breath Away from Top Gun. Audrey II responds to Seymour's attempts to kill it by turning the flower shop into rubble. Seymour electrocutes and destroys Audrey II with a downed power line. Free at last, Seymour and Audrey marry and move into their suburban dream home, though we see at the very end that a miniature clipping of Audrey II has taken up residence in their garden. This is not the ending you'll get if you see the musical on stage, and it's not the ending that was originally shot. The original ending was rated so poorly by test audiences that 23 minutes of footage were scrapped, and the actors were brought back to film an entirely new ending. The original ending was included as part of a director's cut, which was released on DVD in 2012. In the director's cut, Audrey II kills Audrey, and a distraught Seymour feeds her corpse to Audrey II. Audrey II then kills and eats Seymour, and little cuttings of Audrey II are sold all over the world, leading to bloodshed, war, and ruin. It's an ending that works great in an off-Broadway comedy, where audiences are primed to expect dark and caustic humor. But it's a much harder sell for a mainstream Hollywood musical, where audiences are primed for a happy resolution, and thus do not expect the likable and sympathetic romantic leads to die horribly. So Frank Oz reshot the ending, which delayed the film's release. The new ending did the trick. Critics loved it, and it performed respectably at the box office and went on to become a huge hit on home video. Warner Brothers reportedly has a remake in the works, though it's been delayed or possibly canceled due to the pandemic. The prospective casting includes Taron Egerton and Scarlett Johansson as Seymour and Audrey, with Billy Porter as Audrey II and Chris Evans as Orrin. As much as I tend to be lukewarm on all these remakes of beloved 80s films that have been popping up in recent years, I confess to being very intrigued by those casting choices. Little Shop of Horrors is delightful. The source material is a great deal of fun. The songs are catchy, the lyrics are clever, and the whole production is infused with an infectious silliness. The film is a good time, and the cast is perfect. Rick Moranis and Ellen Greene are extremely endearing, and you can see why test audiences were not thrilled about seeing them get killed and eaten in that early cut. The film stacks the deck with talented comedians in scene-stealing supporting roles like John Candy and Bill Murray and Christopher Guest, and especially Steve Martin. The 80s weren't exactly a booming time for movie musicals. There were a few released early in the decade, like 1982's Annie, 1980's Popeye, 1982's Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, 1982's The Pirate Movie, 1983's Yentl. But after A Chorus Line tanked at the box office in 1985, the prevalent feeling was that the golden era of movie musicals was long over. With its combination of witty and hummable songs and a crackerjack cast, Little Shop of Horrors breathed new life into a floundering genre. Next time, I'm looking at the biggest film of 1982, E.T. Thank you very much for joining me. I will meet you here later.